This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nizzahon, and it's Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Normally in this series I look at Magic's historical past to discuss the best cards in a particular category, but today we're looking at the here and now. My Streets of New Capenna limited set review has been ongoing for the last week or so, and as usual, the new limited format is taking over one of this week's MTG Top 10s, and today I'll be giving my picks for the biggest bombs in the new format. In Magic, a bomb is a good thing and refers to a card so powerful that it can swing the game wildly in your favor. The biggest bombs can even get you back in the game if you're behind. Basically, these are the most powerful cards in the limited format that you most want to see in Pack 1 Pick 1 scenarios in Draft, or that you most want to open in your sealed pool. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, I've got Evelyn the Covetous. On her own, Evelyn is generally going to generate a 2-for-1 at the very worst, because when she comes into play, you get to exile the top card of your library and the top card of your opponent's library, and then once on your turn, you can play a card from exile that she's exiled. And you can spend mana of any color to cast it, and the reason she's usually going to generate at least that much value is because you can flash her into play at the end of your opponent's turn, untap, and get to use one of those cards. And she has the potential for way more value than that too. You can flash her in to kill an X2. I mean, a 2/5 that flashes in can block and kill a lot of things. You are putting her at a little bit of risk if you do it, but it will happen sometimes. And then if you have other vampires in your deck, and you will, there's a lot of them in this set. It's not exactly a vampire tribal set, but Evelyn will have other vampires in decks with her. So you'll be able to exile other things and keep the value going, effectively drawing yourself an extra card every turn and getting card selection when you do it. So she's not a big imposing dragon or anything like that as a bomb, but she generates value that it's very hard for your opponent to catch up to. Also helps that she costs hybrid mana. You can play her in any black deck, and that's pretty sweet. At number 4, I've got Falco Sparrow. This leader of the brokers starts out as a 4-mana 3/3 with flying, trample, and a shield counter. It's a good place to start, though not enough to be a bomb. What really makes it a bomb is that you can cash in counters to cast cards off the top of your library, and if you're in a broker's deck, you're going to have shield counters, you're going to have +1/+1 counters, you're going to have ways to cast these spells, effectively making the top card in your library into a card in your hand. And sure, you have to give up something to cast them, but giving up counters to do that is almost always going to be worth it. So, sort of like Evelyn, Falco Sparrow can generate a ton of value, a ton of card advantage, but it's also actually an imposing attacker, unlike her. Next up, I've got Zitorah the Incinerator. This is, of course, the leader of the Riveteers. Zitorah is a huge dragon, literally as a 6-mana 6/6 flyer, but what really makes Zitorah a bomb is the instep trigger, which lets you sacrifice another creature. When you do, not only does Zitorah deal damage equal to that creature's power to any target, you also create 3 treasure tokens. So this is another card where even if your opponent kills it right away, they untap and kill her, let's say. Even if that happens, you've probably already generated enough value that you're basically getting a 2-for-1. There's a lot of good sacrifice fodder in this set, from blitz creatures to creature tokens to cards that do things when they die. So Zitorah will have things to sacrifice, and that ability can be a removal spell. It can go after the opponent's dome. And then you also get 3 treasure, which really softens the blow of giving up a creature in the first place. And then, of course, if they don't kill her, not only is she doing stuff with your creatures by sacrificing them and generating treasure, she's also attacking really hard in the air. At number 7, I have Erbrask Heretic Praetor. So, Erbrask is a 5-mana 4/4 with haste. Not the most impressive stat line ever, but Erbrask does a whole lot more than that. First of all, you get to draw a card, effectively, every turn, an extra card. You exile the top card, so it's the red impulse draw, as they call it, every turn, and you can only play it during that turn, but once you're at 5 mana, you're going to be able to play almost everything you reveal off of that, and so it's like drawing an extra card. That is really strong already, because drawing 1 extra card every turn is a good way to win in Limited. But on top of that, Erbrask also turns it around on your opponent and makes it into a negative effect. So for you, you get to exile an extra card in addition to the one you would draw every turn, and then you can play it. Whereas your opponent, when they draw their card during their draw step, instead, they just have to exile that card, and that's the only card they draw. So they have to deal with the downside that comes with this reveal impulse draw-like effect, but they don't also get another card. So basically, Erbrask draws you an extra card every turn, and at the very least, makes your opponent alter their game plan because they have to use or lose the card that they would draw every turn. So he's going to generate insane value for you, while also probably getting in for 4 the turn you play him. Next up, I've got Titan of Industry. This is a huge 7-mana creature that's a 7-mana reach trampler, but what really makes it a bomb is the fact that when you play it, you get 2 enter the battlefield abilities. You get to decide whether you want to naturalize something, whether you want to gain 5 life, whether you want to make a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token, or put a shield counter on a creature you control. And you can choose 2 of those. You know, I said in the set review, I think the most common thing you'll choose, the thing that'll be sort of the best in the most situations, is going to be to play the Titan, make a 4/4, and put a shield counter on the Titan, because your opponent has to interact twice to take down the Titan, and because it has trample, they can't just throw a token in front of it to get rid of the shield counter. Your opponent's going to be in a tough spot with a hard-to-kill 7/7 and a 4/4 hitting the board. Now, sometimes you have to gain the life so you don't die. Sometimes you'll have something to blow up an enchantment or an artifact, but the Rhino and the shield counter seem like the most value the most often. There is the chance if they do have an artifact or enchantment, you can get the Rhino, get the 7/7, and destroy their artifact or enchantment, and then you get a 3-for-1. So, you know, that's pretty good too, but it won't come up as much. So yeah, Titan of Industry is amazing. Definitely worth the 7 mana that it costs. At number 5, I've got Vivian on the Hunt. So this is a powerful planeswalker. A lot of them are unlimited, especially when they cost 6. She can protect herself with a -1 that makes a Rhino token. She has a +1 that's going to draw you like 2 cards most of the time. And her +2 is probably her worst ability, but there are definitely times where you can utilize her +2 to search up something that you really need to get out of your library, or you can give up a creature that has Blitz that's going to die anyway, use the +2, get to draw a card from the Blitz mechanic, and then also put something into play. That's going to feel absurd. The +1 and -1 are the ones that are going to be the best in basically any deck, but the +2 in a deck with a lot of Blitz, also pretty absurd. But yeah, if you're a planeswalker who can protect yourself and draw cards, you're usually a bomb and limited, and she does both of those things. At number 4, I've got Soul of Emancipation. So this is another big 7-mana creature, but the effect it has on the game is definitely worth the mana, and it has a really nice, flexible effect. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy 3 non-land permanents. And then for each of those, its controller gets a 3/3 White Angel creature token with flying. So the best thing to do with the Soul, probably, is going to be to target your own treasure, or to target your creatures with shield counters. The shield counter creatures won't die, but you'll still get 3/3 angels. A lot of the time, you're going to pay 7 for this, and the board position you get, which is a 5/7 and 3/3/3s, is going to be a lot. And it's not quite as good as just straight up giving you 3/3/3s, because you're probably going to have to give up some things. But if it's a treasure or a shield counter or an otherwise expendable creature, it's going to feel pretty close to just getting 3/3/3 flyers. It also has the upside of, say your opponent has one of these crazy bombs, like Zitorah or whatever, you can kill that and downgrade it to a 3/3 with flying. I mean, that's less ideal, but sometimes you got to kill those things, even if it means giving your opponent something back. So this can change the board drastically, most frequently by just making it so you have 3/3/3 flyers in addition to this 5/7 body, but the upside of also being able to blow up any non-land of your opponents and replace it with a 3/3 flyer is pretty good. At number 3, I have Obnixulus the Adversary, another planeswalker. He's really cheap. If you end up against an Obnixulus on turn 3 that has casualtied at all, which is like, you know, they sacrifice a 1/1 and a copy comes into play with a loyalty counter on it. If that happens, I don't see how you can win. He has a -2 that protects him with devil tokens, which is a really effective way to protect yourself because the devil tokens cause all kinds of problems because they ping things when they die. And he has a +1 that will frequently end up gaining you life. There are a decent number of demons or devils in the set, and he, of course, makes devil tokens himself. And it also makes your opponent either lose life or discard a card, and that's going to pressure them a fair bit too. Now, if this didn't have casualty, it wouldn't be a bomb at all, because, you know, in a vacuum, Obnixulus on his own, one copy of Obnixulus isn't crazy powerful. But if you're casualtying, like I said, even a 1/1, and you're getting both of these in play, and so the turn you play it, you probably make a 1/1, and then use the +1 of the other one, your opponent is going to have a very hard time ever finding a way to deal with both of them, because they're going to quickly generate advantage for you on the board and pick apart their hand, do damage to them. and eventually get to an ultimate. You can just sacrifice one big thing and use the ultimate on Obnixulus, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be very difficult to beat on turn 3 if your opponent generates 2 copies for him, and he's also just really good all game long. You can make the copy come into play with even more loyalty and more flexible situations the longer the game goes, in most situations too, and usually what you're sacrificing will generate value. So you basically never want to see this on turn 3. It does get worse in the late game, but it's still probably going to take over the game in the end. At number 2, I've got Elspeth Resplendent. Another Planeswalker. All 3 Planeswalkers in the set made this list. That might sound like that always happens, but it really doesn't, actually. There's usually 1 or 2 Planeswalkers on these, but there's usually one that is better for constructed formats or whatever and not so good in limited. Not true here. Elspeth Resplendent is incredibly powerful. Her +1 lets you put a counter on a creature, a +1/+1 counter, and then also a keyword counter. And those keyword counters can help you protect her. She doesn't generate tokens exactly, but whatever creatures you have in play will become better, significantly better from her +1. If you give it vigilance, it can even attack and protect her. You can give it flying if you're worried about a flyer. You can give it first strike if that makes your creature more effective at blocking attackers. And you can also give it lifelink. And these things all work aggressively too. Her -3 does protect her. You look at the top 7 cards of your library and you put a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from among them on the battlefield. Normally, that's going to be a creature, because if you're using her -3, it probably means you don't have a board that can protect her, but her -3 can protect her, especially because that creature gets a shield counter. Remember, this ability can hit any permanent card with mana value 3 or less, but a shield counter is meaningless on anything that's not a creature, or a planeswalker, I guess, but you're not going to have Obnixulus in your deck. And then she has an ultimate that she can get to rather quickly, where she just throws 5/3/3 angels on the table. So she makes your board a lot better right away, one way or another, whether with a +1 or -3. And if you're at parity and you can just use her +1, or if you're ahead, you're going to get to her -7 and just win the game with that, if you didn't already win the game just by using her +1 a couple of times. Before we get to the number 1 card, here are the honorable mentions for this video. These are all the cards that received bomb grades in my set review, but I decided they weren't quite as powerful as the 10 cards I put on this list. That said, I think there is an argument to be made that any of these could be on this list too. And at number 1, it's Sanctuary Warden, a huge angel, 6 mana, 5/5 flyer who comes with 2 shield counters, so right away dealing with her is not going to be very much fun. And on top of that, she comes with an Enter the Battlefield ability that lets you remove a counter from a creature, which can mean her shield counter, it can mean a +1/+1 counter on something, it can mean a keyword counter from Elspeth, although that's not really going to come up. Any counter can be removed, though, and then you not only draw a card, you also make a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. And then when she attacks, she gives you the option of doing it again. So it's very hard for your opponent, like even if they do somehow manage to lock her down, there are auras that can do it. She's going to have given you an Enter the Battlefield ability that already generated a card and then some of value. And killing her with any sort of typical removal spell just isn't going to work, because she's going to have at least 1 shield counter on her still, in addition to just hitting them really hard in the air and adding to the board and drawing you cards. So she doesn't quite have hexproof, but it's going to feel that way sometimes, and that's a pretty scary thing to have on a creature that generates this much value. So those are my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in the format. Do you think I left any out? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to catch draft videos of the new format, me talking about this new format as it develops in my weekly vlog series called Nizzahon Notes, you should subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting the channel, you can on Patreon. Thanks for watching.